piece set on double time. Gave me the slip till I hit that summertime. All the sun and the world, all the rum and the girls, all the wind and the hair. Where do you hide your soul?
Welcome everyone, the PHM from Pittsburgh, although this week we should call it PHM from Seattle. What you're listening to is our special set of podcast episodes we've created for the Pediatric Hospital Medicine National Conference in Seattle, Washington this year. The original music that's introing us in was sent in by Dr. Sam Nahar, who's in a group called Apartment X, and the song is Run at the Sun. Dr. Nahar works as a pediatric hospitalist in Jackson, Michigan, and he trained at the University of Michigan, and he's relocating to the Philadelphia area, so good luck, Dr. Nahar. Again, the band is called Apartment X, and the song is Run at the Sun. So these special episodes are created for the Pediatric Hospital Medicine Conference, and we're going to feature these intro and exit music from hospitals around the country just to showcase some of our non-medical talents. In case you don't know, I'm your host, Dr. Tony Tarchichi. I'm a med-peds trained pediatric hospitalist at UPMC Children's Hospital, Pittsburgh. And we've had this podcast going on since about October of 2016 when we became a subspecialty. This episode is part of our special educational series on leadership in pediatrics created for the PHM conference. So to that end, let me introduce my special guest. It is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Ellen Wald to the podcast. Dr. Wald earned her medical degree from the State University of New York Downstate Medical Center in Brooklyn, New York. She completed her pediatric residency at King's College Hospital in Brooklyn and her fellowship in pediatric infectious diseases at the University of Maryland Hospital in Baltimore. Dr. Wald currently serves as the Alfred Dorrance Daniels Professor and Chair of the Department of Pediatrics at the University of Wisconsin-Madison School of Medicine and Public Health, and as Physician-in-Chief of the American Family Children's Hospital. She's an internationally recognized expert on the diagnosis and treatment of pediatric infectious diseases. Dr. Wald's published numerous articles in peer-reviewed journals, including New England Journal of Medicine, Pediatrics, the Journal of Allergy and Clinical Immunology, and the Pediatric Infectious Disease Journal. She maintains an active research program mainly focused on upper respiratory infections in children, such as sinusitis, otitis media, and pharyngitis. Dr. Wald was named Pediatrician of the Year in 1997 by the Pennsylvania chapter of the American Academy of Pediatrics, and in 2001 she was honored with the Howard Mermelstein Award for Excellence in Pediatrics. She was named Distinguished Physician of the Year by the Pediatric Infectious Disease Society in 2006, and she was selected in 2007 as the Outstanding Clinical Teacher in the Department of Pediatrics by the Pediatric Residents. She has served as Chair of the Section of Infectious Diseases of the American Academy of Pediatrics and Chair of the Sub-Board of Infectious Diseases of the American Board of Pediatrics. In 2018, Dr. Wald was the recipient of the Alumni Achievement Award from SUNY Downstate Medical Center. So, Dr. Wald, thank you very much for taking the time to join us today.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me.
So, because we have CME attached to this, courtesy of the University of Pittsburgh, thank you, University of Pittsburgh, we have to do our conflict of interest statements first. So I will start. I have nothing to disclose.
And I also have nothing to disclose.
That's great. So the topic is leadership, which in and of itself is somewhat of a vague topic to discuss, but I think we can structure it a little. And so we can talk about that the American Association of Medical Colleges has identified leadership as the most critical component for success. I've done a good bit of research on this to prepare for these podcasts, and everything we've talked about, every book, every TED Talk I've watched, lecture at a business school, academic article on leadership, it starts out in a similar way. It discusses that there's a void in leadership and that we need more good leaders. So I'm going to ask you, Dr. Wald, do you think in hospital medicine or in pediatrics in general, let's just focus on our area, so pediatrics, do you think we need more good leaders?
I guess I think we always need good leaders wherever we are, right? And, whether we're in academic medicine or we're in business or we're doing things in the community, I think, leadership is an important quality.
So can we talk about your definition of leadership?
Well, I think unlike you, Tony, I haven't done a lot of reading and I haven't watched a lot of TED Talks, but knowing that I was going to participate in this discussion at least made me reflect on what I think leadership means. And I think for me, it means the ability to inspire confidence and optimism in people around you so that they're willing to follow your direction and your lead.
I think go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think that is it. I think the confidence is really essential, trust and confidence, and so people then will look toward you and will, again, be willing to follow you, because I think that is what leadership means. It means that people will be willing to follow your direction.
I think you hit the nail on the head. I have a definition here from the International Journal of Medical Education from Barry Grunberg and et al. The article is a 4-year medical school leadership education development program, and the definition is leadership is defined as influence on individuals and groups by enhancing behaviors like actions, cognitions, perceptions, thoughts, and beliefs, and motivations, why people act as they do, to achieve a goal that benefits the individual and group. But your definition, I like it a lot, trust and confidence. So, I guess the most obvious next question to ask is, how do you inspire trust when you're a chair of pediatrics? Do you know how many positions are in your department?
I do. We have about 180 faculty.
How do you get 180 faculty to trust you?
I think the key elements is that, I try very hard to be fair-minded and even-handed, and you try to be transparent in the decisions that you make so that people understand what, has motivated you. And I think also you indicate by your words and your actions that you're really trying to promote everybody's accomplishments. And so I think that's also, one of the important characteristics for someone who's willing to take on a position like the chair. And that is that you, I think, have to subjugate your own accomplishments to those of your faculty. So that is the important outcome, is helping each of your faculty members become everything that they're capable of doing, maximizing, their abilities and their accomplishments, and then at the same time, collectively, you hopefully advance your entire department. And so I think when people believe that that's what your objective is, then they can place their confidence in you. So
then you have to have your personal career, your personal research, grant funding, et cetera, take a back seat to the overall well-being of the group. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I would say that. I think people definitely, and I have continued to do some research, but, my major objective, although I certainly want to continue to succeed, my major objective now is to make sure as best as I can that all the folks that I work with who are sort of under or within our department can achieve all that they're hoping to. And then, that includes the residents too. I think the residents also, take that direction from you where they believe that you are interested in their well-being individually and professionally.
Am I safe in assuming that if you do that, that inspires trust, and then the trust you think will lead to the confidence in you as a leader?
Yeah, I think the trust leads to confidence, and then, of course, if they see that some things are actually happening that they regard as positive, then, of course, they're willing to continue to give you that trust.
Now, is this something you've developed over time as you began getting more and more leadership opportunities and positions? That this philosophy of yours, it almost sounds like a servant leader model. Would you say that's fair?
I think that's fair. Yes. I think I haven't thought about it so much as I think for me personally, it's been kind of intuitive that this is the way to get folks to believe in you, is to really believe in them and help them achieve their optimum potential.
One of the things I would love to talk about is getting to chair position, but I guess let's start smaller. Can you talk about one of your first leadership positions and something you think you learned from it?
Yeah, I was thinking, again, in the context of this interview, I've been thinking a little bit about it. So, of course, I was a chief resident, although, I was one of 4 chief residents in my pediatric program a long time ago. And, I think in that context, I, mostly tried to ensure that the, residents did their jobs and patients were well taken care of. The next sort of leadership opportunity I had was when I went to do a fellowship at the University of Maryland in infectious diseases. And the first year that I was there, I had a mentor who was actually very much my contemporary, but he was, in terms of chronologic age, but he was really advanced in training and was able to mentor me. And even when I began that fellowship, and he was the only other pediatrician in that infectious disease program. It was an infectious disease program which was largely comprised of adult infectious disease folks. He told me that he would be leaving, or he'd be doing a sabbatical in about 9 months. And so it turned out that 9 months later, I was kind of on my own as the most senior pediatric infectious disease person, although I was operating in this context of many adult ID people who were really good clinicians. And so that opportunity to kind of be in charge was really, when I think back on it, I think that I learned more in that 9 months than I ever learned before or after, because I really had to take responsibility for finding the answers to certain questions as best as I could, for teaching and again for trying to assure that patients got good care. And so I learned that when, the ball lands at your feet, you sort of dig in to make sure that you can answer the question. And, while people think that evidence-based medicine is a new idea, it was a lot easier to review the literature then because there was a lot less of it. But when I had clinical questions that I was unfamiliar with, I really went to read as much as I could. And then I conferred with my colleagues who were doing adult ID, who, again, were very good clinicians. And I was able to, I think, manage to do it successfully. And so it was just an experience of, I think, assuming responsibility and sort of carrying through. But from a personal perspective, I learned a lot of infectious diseases, and I learned actually to kind of rely on myself to come to a conclusion after doing as much reading and thinking as I could about any particular topic, so that while I think many junior people learn to do things because that's what they were taught, I felt like I learned to do things because that's what I learned by reading as much as I could.
Did you say this was during your fellowship, or this is earlier in academic career?
No, this was during my fellowship. So, things were much less structured in those days. It was quite a few decades ago. So we didn't have content specifications and a variety of things like that. It was all, pretty informal. Yes, it was during my fellowship.
So you're in your fellowship, you're the most senior pediatric infectious disease person, and you're handling everything. Any questions that come up, and that sounds like you were saying that would sound stressful.
Well, this is another thing I learned from a psychologist quite a few decades ago. Stress is okay as long as it's not distress. I think we have lives that have many stressful components in them, and I think we can't expect them to not have stress as long as we can use that stress to kind of expand ourselves and meet some challenges. I think that's okay. It was a really tremendous growth experience.
Yeah, I feel like thinking about that, the one thing I would believe I'd walk away from is confidence in myself, that I can do it and solve a problem, and I know what I'm doing. Is that fair? Yes, absolutely. And so, in fact, when my mentor came back, I was a little resentful, because I had gotten used to kind of coming to my own conclusions about stuff. But all in all, and then I stayed on the faculty at the University of Maryland for 3 years. That was my first faculty appointment. Well, I think you earned it at that point. Yeah, right. So so you really, it sounds like you learned to rely on yourself. You learned you had a lot of self-confidence. You're able to tackle things on your own. One of the things I did want to ask you, being a chair of pediatrics, and you talked a little bit about your goal is everyone who you're working with to promote them and to help them in their careers, whether it's residents, faculty, or whomever. But one of the things I don't know, and I was always curious, is what do chairs do during the day? What is your average day as a chair of pediatrics? What's it filled with?
Yeah, so as a chair, I like to be clinically visible. So every morning I do attend morning report or whatever is the clinical equivalent of that, grand rounds, morning report. And then I round with the residents once a week. I did that today. So Tuesday mornings I round with them for a couple of hours, and I just kind of attend their I round with the hospitalists actually, because they're the general floor attendings, and I just come along and, sometimes they try to show me infectious disease cases, but I'm happy to just kind of be there with whatever patients they're seeing and, try to add, if I can, to their education. Then I think a lot of the time that I spend is meeting with people, and so, of course, I meet with my vice chairs once a week. I meet with the division chiefs, all the division chiefs collectively once every couple of weeks. I meet with some of them individually once a month. And then, in order to stay informed, this is a big institution, the University of Wisconsin. And so, of course, I function as a department chair in the context of 17 other department chairs. So I kind of need to know what's going on campus-wide. And then I need to know what's going on department-wide, because 180 people and, 45 residents and 30 fellows, it's a big group. And so it really means that I go to a fair number of meetings in which I receive information and other meetings in which I deliver information. And then once in a while I have an hour of downtime, but not that often.
But so now you're being clinically visible. You round every Tuesday. You round with the teams. You do that, and you feel that that's important. Why do you feel that that's important?
I think it's really important because I want the residents to know that I really care about clinical activity. That it really, I want to see what it's like to practice medicine in this hospital and discover what some of the obstacles or barriers are. And then I want them to know that I think it's important, that it's it's a really important thing that we do and that we do it well. And that I'm looking at it and I know what they're doing. I get to know them very well. I mean, I must say that I go with the same team. We have 3 teams, white, red, and blue, and I go with the white team every week, and eventually, of course, everybody rotates through the white team. So it's a real opportunity, and, if I do every week, then I'm on that, I get to see them for 4 weeks in a row, and I get to see the students as well. Not all the students, because some of the students are, only going to be assigned to white, and I'll never meet the other students sort of face to face, but it's a really great opportunity for me to, as well as morning report. I get to know the residents very well, and morning report is in addition. But it's really a great opportunity for me to get to know them.
Speaking of residents, one of the things that I've been reading a lot about is how do we get to teach leadership. And then when you look at academic medicine and other journals, there's this term called accidental administrator, which I'll put in quotation marks. And that's often the way physicians are promoted, and they're promoted through their career achievements. And a lot of it, and especially in academic medicine, is grant funding, publications, etc. A lot of it is centered around grants. Do you agree that that's the best way to promote physicians in the leadership positions within hospitals?
No, I don't think it's the best way, but you're absolutely right. It's the traditional way that people are recognized is really, in general, not without exception, is for their research accomplishments or their scholarly accomplishments. The fact is that, no one really knows what goes on in a hospital from the perspective of patient care or teaching, except the people who really live in that hospital. And the only way that people know us as an institution is really through what we write and where we talk, where we give talks, the grants we have, the publications we have. So we get to be known through, again, our scholarly achievements, and that is, or that has been the currency, I think, by and large, for identifying folks who become chair people. I think there's more attention paid these days to people's ability, so-called emotional intelligence. I think people, certainly pay lip service to that, and more appreciation of really what it does take to have a department function pretty cohesively. So a little bit more. But I'll tell you that at this particular institution, UW, University of Wisconsin, in order to be chair, you have to be in the tenure stream. And and the tenure stream here is a pretty stringent stream. And there are many very capable people who are not in the tenure stream who could easily be department chair people from the perspective of their accomplishments and skills, who would not be eligible to take such roles here at the university. I don't think that is necessarily a universal requirement, but it happens to be one here.
I have not come across any better way to recognize, short of personal interaction with physicians, oh, this person's really good, a great leader, a good moral state, good moral compass, etc. Have you come across a better way to figure out who would be good for a leadership position?
Well, I think within hospital institutions, there are people whose abilities stand out, when they begin to serve on committees or they take on roles which, put them in a leadership position. And one could build a dossier on the basis of what you begin to do locally and then what you begin to do nationally on, serving on committees or being on boards or, in various other capacities where people have a chance to see your leadership skills. I think it's possible, certainly possible to build that reputation, outside of your NIH grants.
So I want to ask you a couple of more difficult questions. So last year at the PHM conference in Atlanta, Dr. Nancy Spector was one of the plenary speakers, and she was talking about diversity and leadership. Mm-hmm. And one of the things she said was that there is a lack, or there is not enough, or a lack, or however you want to phrase it, female chairs in medicine in general and in pediatrics as well. I'll first ask you, you're a chair of pediatrics, you're a female, so do you agree with that, disagree with that? How do you feel?
Well, I was trying to look up before this phone call to see what the actual percentage of women chairs is right now, and I think it's about 25%. So I've been doing this job for 13 years, and so in these 13 years, it's gone from the range of 10 to 12% to, I think, as I said, I think it's about 25% now, and that's the national number. So that's pretty good. It seems a little bit discrepant because I think if we looked at the incoming class of pediatricians or as they graduate from residency, there are a predominance of women, and that's why it is, I think, terrific that there are more and more women leaders, because they should be available as role models for, the legion of young women who are choosing to do pediatrics. And then I'll tell you just one more story about the University of Wisconsin. So I was the first female chair here in 2006.
Is that right?
And now there are more women chairs than there are men chairs.
That's only 13 years. That's great.
Yeah. So that's, I think, a credit to Dr. Golden, Robert Golden, who's our dean. Now, I think in the end, you should choose people on the basis of their talents and skills and not their gender.
Okay.
And so, as I wouldn't want to see, frankly, maybe I should be careful what I say publicly. I wouldn't want to see all the chairs become women here or in pediatrics. I like the mix of men and women among my faculty members and among the residents. I think we do good things. Diversity is good. And so I like, all kinds of folks to contribute to our ideas and to our learning.
Do you think, because you're a woman chair, do you think it was harder for you to get to your position because you're a woman? Do you think you would have been there sooner had you been a man? That's a hard question to answer.
Well, I really didn't start looking for or knowing that I wanted to be a chair till about 15 or 16 years ago. So I have to say, personally, I don't think I've ever experienced discrimination because I was a woman. And that's just my personal story.
Okay. One of the best explanations that I have come across for why leadership is difficult for physicians is basically how we're trained. In medicine, we focus on the individual patient and the physician-patient level, that one relationship. And in leadership, there's talk There's a great article in MJM 2006 by Dr. Collins Nakai talking about this balcony perspective, where leadership involves stepping away from the individual physician-patient relationship and looking at the problems from a systems level. They call this that balcony perspective. In your time, and you've seen leaders come and go, and you've had leaders in your divisions come and go, do you find that to be true, that sometimes some physicians or physicians in general have more trouble looking at things from a systems perspective as opposed to an individual perspective?
No, I don't agree with that. I think that medical decision-making is one thing, and decision-making in other domains is different, and that learning to think one way about clinical problems, I think, doesn't impair your ability to think in a more general way.
You talked about emotional intelligence, and now there's all these ideas of self-leadership being most important before you can become a leader. So you have to have self-awareness, self-reflection, self-regulation, emotional intelligence. You have to know yourself and be comfortable regulating yourself and have your own, the best term in quotes, moral compass before you can be a leader. Do you agree with that?
I think there's a lot of truth in that statement. I think, as we talked about, I had early experiences in which I developed self-confidence, and then, just growth experiences as one matures. We keep maturing, right, as we grow older and we have more life experiences, both in our homes as well as our professions, and then in, the world in general. And I think there is a certain, maybe wisdom is not the word, but there's a certain increase in, the worldliness and the confidence with which we sort of approach the challenges that we're facing. And I think that, knowing yourself is important, and, being confident is important, but not so self-confident that you rub people the wrong way or you seem like you're arrogant.
Confidence and arrogance is a fine line, I've found.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of leadership courses, and you, even as a department chair, there is a leadership program just for the Association of Medical School Pediatric Department Chairs Pediatric Leadership Development Program. Do you, in your experience, for you personally, do you find all of these leadership courses and programs beneficial, helpful, or is this something you feel you had intrinsically and it was just there?
I got into this leadership business pretty late in my career. It's something that I thought about quite a bit earlier, and then decided that I didn't want to be a chair, that I was very content being a division chief. I think had I started out earlier, 10 or 15 years earlier, which I surely could have, those things might have been more beneficial. And, you can always learn from all of those experiences, I think, that you learn. But I don't know that they're critical in terms of making you definitely better able to be an effective chair. So for me, at the time that I entered, again, 13 years ago, I don't even know. I think it was just becoming available at that time, maybe even a year or two after I joined. And so I didn't go through it, and I haven't actually ever taken a leadership course.
Never.
I don't know if that's good or bad. I've been muddling through. But I think I'm pretty sure that if I had done this when I was 50, that maybe I would have been more interested in trying to take on a leadership course to make me more confident in my role as chair. But I got into this really pretty late in the game, and I guess I felt like I would know how to do it. And one of the things that happened that maybe gave me the confidence was that I was at the Children's Hospital of Pittsburgh for a long time, and I served as the interim chair there for 6 months. I was the sort of acting chair when the chair took a sabbatical, and then I became the interim chair when the chair stepped down. And so I did that for the first stint was 6 months, and the second was 2 years. So I served for 2 years as an interim chair. And although being an interim chair is quite a bit different than being a real chair, I think that gave me a lot of confidence. And so really I had kind of an audition, and didn't feel a need personally to take on one of those courses.
So then I have two follow-up questions for that. So first, you talked about not wanting, being happy being a division leader, not wanting to be a chair. Can you talk about why?
Yeah, well, I think I loved being a division chief of infectious diseases. You know, it's a smaller group of people for whom you're responsible and for whom you're leading, but they're all really interested and passionate about exactly the same thing that you are, which is a lot of fun. And that's also true for the fellows, who you're able to really teach at an advanced level, which is likewise fun. And then you're spending more time on your research and scholarly work and less on administration. And so that combination of things was really appealing to me. I thought it was really the best of all worlds. But it was a consequence of my ability to do that interim chair that gave me the experience and showed me that really I felt like I was good at the role of chair and that it played to many of my strengths and that I wanted to do it at that point in my career.
How is an interim chair's position different than a full permanent chair?
Well, you don't quite have all the resources and decision making. Sort of depends upon your dean, but usually a dean doesn't want to give the interim chair too many resources because they're saving their resources for the person who will take on the new role as chair. And so, that's limiting. But what was fun for me, I had been at Pittsburgh for a long time. I had been there about 20 years before I became the interim chair. And so I was quite a trusted commodity. Everybody knew me very well. And I like to reflect on the fact that, people said to me many times, oh, this is such a thankless job. And I said, in fact, oh, no, people were thanking me every day. And so, I think they were very happy to have a trusted person at the helm. And, I was a good listener, and I tried as much as possible to kind of get things done. And, again, to be working with people, for people.
So two more questions and we'll get you out of here. First, being that this is going to be, advertised, I guess, at the Pediatric Hospital Medicine Conference. And hospital medicine itself for pediatrics is a young field. I mean, we have our first board certification exam this November, and overall it's relatively new. Do you have any advice for hospitalists who are new in this field, would like have leadership positions or anything for a new field like this for those of us who are in it?
Well, we have a wonderful hospitalist group here. This is one of the sort of divisions that I helped create after I came here as chair. And it's really very, very strong. And I lean heavily on them. And I'm so happy with their very high quality because, they're responsible for overseeing quite a lot, of course, of the clinical care and a lot of the teaching. So having this really strong group of people just is a tremendous asset to our program here. So they make me happy every day. I think like anything else, there are leadership opportunities within, of course, our own hospital here and within our department. And I think, people can raise their hands and sort of, take stuff on. Then that gives them the opportunity, to begin to be recognized in their institution. And then, of course, within your groups, I'm sure that as you develop your subspecialty, there are opportunities for people to, work on education committees and on other kinds of planning committees. And I think that's how they get recognized by their peer group. And once they do a good job, then they're going to be called on again and again.
I've heard that over and over. So even these committees in the hospitals or groups that, may not be the most exciting or whatever, if you volunteer and you are chosen as a leader and you do a good job with that, then you get chosen for more things. So it's almost like anything else. So I guess the message is get involved. Is that fair?
Yes, I would. Absolutely. Absolutely.
It doesn't seem like something you can do and almost clock in and clock out. It sounds like to move up and to be a leader, it is going to take up a fair bit of your time.
Oh, there's no question about that. Right. And that's why, one of the things when you ask about, could anybody be a leader? Mm-hmm. I think probably anybody can be a leader. if they are willing, to work at it, it may not always be as natural as other roles, but I think if they want to do it, they can do it. But I think not everybody wants to do it because it does take a lot of time. You're going to be spending time that's going to be as we know, there's still only 24 hours in a day. And if you're spending time taking care of administrative tasks or trying to figure out what other people need, it's going to take time away from doing the other things that you may care about. And so I think people don't necessarily want to give up that time.
That's fair. That's very fair. So anybody can do it. It's a question of if they want to do it.
I think that's a big part of it, if they want to do it. If that's how they are willing to spend their time. And some people might feel like, no, it isn't. I really just want to focus on my own needs and accomplishments.
Well, I have to tell you, this has been a great conversation on leadership. I have really enjoyed it, and I think we've learned a lot, and I really do appreciate the time and your time.
Well, you're very welcome. I appreciate that you asked me to do this.
And so I am going to exit us out. Everyone to do acknowledgments. First, again, I want to thank our special guest, Dr. Ellen Wald, for taking the time out to be with us to talk about this leadership. And Dr. Wald, before I get you out of here, I would say that your central tenet on leadership to me came off as trust, developing trust in those people who you are working with. Is that right? Fair?
Yes, absolutely.
I think that's great. And so for acknowledgments, of course, I want to thank the AAP Society of Hospital Medicine for allowing us to do these podcast series for the PHM conference. All those of you who are listening, thank you for taking the time out. As always, it's Dr. Megan Keene Tarchichi, who helps me with everything, and then the UPMC Children's Hospital of Pittsburgh and the University of Wisconsin, University of Pittsburgh. And we are going to exit you out. While we're leaving, our music will still be Apartment X, the group that Dr. Sam Neymar is a part of. The song you are going to hear while you're exiting out is You're Not Alone. That is You're Not Alone, Apartment X. Thank you very much.
When you feel the fog rolling in and it's heavy-handed, can't see round the bend, if your body tells you that the sun will come again, the well-intentioned words, they don't do a damn thing. I'll be here, we don't have to talk. I know that you're scared, together in this wall. Sometimes it feels so dark and can't see the end or where to start. Feels like been the mark about 1,000 times. And when they're cashing chips in and you've been dealt a shit, don't want a silver lining and you don't wanna be alone. Take my hand, take my heart. It's not an answer, but it's a start.